There is a dire situation for people living with intellectual disabilities in Toronto, where supports are on the verge of collapse. Community Living Toronto says it's making the difficult decision now to sell 3 of its properties just to cover operating costs. So that comes as the wait list to access group homes rises above 4,000 people. Some of those people on that list for decades before they land a spot. Joining us this morning is Brad Saunders, Community Living Toronto CEO, as well as Shanika McLeod, who relies on Community Living Toronto services. Welcome to both of you.
It's good to be here.
Brad, we know in this case involving the man who waited 36 years in order to get a spot with living supports. Clearly, there's a need for the services. So how did we get to this spot where you're selling 3 properties?
Sure. Well, Community Living Toronto is 1,200 dedicated and passionate staff supporting about 4,000 people across the city. And we got here because over the last 2 or 3 decades, we've received very little increase to our base operating dollars, and costs have continued to rise. So as an example, the last increase we got was 2% to our base funding. Prior to that, the last increase was 2009. To put it in perspective, of the 117 member agencies of Community Living Ontario, our umbrella organization, about 50% are experiencing deficits this fiscal year, and that rises to an expected 70% next year.
Shocking numbers to hear. Shanika, you provide janitorial services for the Toronto Living office. What has that job meant to you?
Oh, being a superhero. I'm like Superwoman, cleaning all those
I'm not
desks.
surprised.
Cleaning all those desks, vacuuming, mopping. It's really good. It gives you the strength and inspiration to be for other people.
Amazing. You know, and Brad, in those 30 years, the baseline funding for Ontario, as you pointed out, it's risen by less than 4%.
It has.
I think you're saying, right? So if you are already at the point where you're selling properties, what does the future look like if nothing changes? And what happens when those facilities are sold?
Right, so the homes that we were selling had been vacated. So people had moved to other living situations that we've developed. And ordinarily we would repurpose those homes for people that you mentioned, the 4,000 people waiting. We're just not able to do that this time. What happens if the funding doesn't come through? We support people residentially, so about 500 people live with us.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to sort of save and come up with ways, but we've cashed in reserves, we've done all but non-critical repairs and really managed our costs quite tightly.
When you look at the overall amount of money that's given to services like Toronto Community, it's very low in Ontario compared to other provinces, and even lower when we've considered, like in New York City, for example, 4% of their budget goes to support homes like this. In Ontario, it's just over 1%.
Yeah, I think Ontario can do better. We have a lot of conversations with our political colleagues and talking about this pressure.
They're
well aware of it. We have met with every single MPP and every single cabinet member across the province through our network around the province. So they understand the problem. It's difficult being in government right now. There's infinite need on finite resources, but we have been excellent stewards of public funding for decades, and we're in crisis now and need some help.
Yeah, and this is not like the kind of work where you can, shift some money around or do whatever to provide services. You're already doing what you can do.
We've done that, yeah.
Shanika, Community Living Toronto, we've been having this discussion about struggle to pay bills. What kind of concerns does that raise for you?
I'm concerned about my job, Will they have enough funding to still keep Sunrise Janitorial running? And I'm also concerned about the supports I get at work with my work and colleagues, like their family, and I would be devastated if they don't have any more funding, or the lack of funding, or not, the increase. I would be really sad.
Shanika, you do public speaking, you talk about this all the time, but if you had a member of government sitting here where I am right now, what would you say to them?
I'll be like, you guys need to work on this. You guys need to do something about it, because it's just like, it's not fair for, people in the community in Toronto have to, sell their properties or do something drastic to still have funding. Like, the government really needs to step up and step on the roles and keep the promises that they said, and continue to do so,
Shanika, that's why you have the last word in this conversation.
Great, thank
Brad
you.
and Shanika, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.